I remember the exhaustion, not the kind that sleep could fix, the kind that lived in my chest, the weight of being watched, the pressure of being known. Every morning, I would wake up and immediately reach for my phone. Before my feet touched the ground, before I felt the morning air, I was already performing, crafting the caption, choosing the angle, editing the moment before I'd even lived it. I told myself I was connecting, sharing, being authentic. But late at night, when the notifications stopped glowing, I felt more alone than ever. There was this constant hum beneath everything I did, a voice asking, did they see it? Did they like it? Do they still remember me? I became a curator of my own life. Every experience filtered through the question, is this worth sharing? A sunset wasn't beautiful anymore, it was content. A struggle wasn't personal, it was relatable. I wasn't living, I was narrating. And somewhere in all that noise, I lost track of who I was when no one was watching. Maybe you know this feeling too. This strange, modern loneliness. This need to be seen, validated, remembered, as if your existence depends on their attention, as if silence means erasure. We have built entire identities out of being visible, and we are so tired. There's an old story about a monk named Ryokan who lived deep in the mountains. For 20 years, he had been known throughout the villages below. People traveled great distances to hear his teachings. They called him wise, enlightened, a master. And for 20 years, he spoke. But one winter, something shifted within him. Without explanation, he stopped receiving visitors. He closed the gates to his temple. He stopped writing, stopped teaching. He let the world forget his name. The villagers were confused. Some felt abandoned. Others said he had lost his way. But Ryokan simply sat in silence, in stillness. He did not explain himself. He did not defend his disappearance. He just stopped being seen. Years passed. One day, a traveler climbed the mountain, searching for the temple he'd heard about in stories. He found it half hidden by moss and overgrown vines. Inside, Ryokan sat by a window, watching snow fall. The traveler asked, "Master, why did you leave? Why did you stop teaching?" Ryokan smiled gently. "I didn't stop teaching," he said. "I stopped performing. There's a difference, a profound one. Teaching comes from fullness. Performing comes from emptiness. When we are constantly visible, we begin to shape ourselves around the eyes watching us. We smooth the rough edges. We hide the contradictions. We become digestible, palatable, safe. But in doing so, we lose the rawness, the truth, the parts of us that don't translate well into words or images. Ryokan understood something essential. You cannot know yourself while performing yourself. Visibility demands consistency, but growth demands change. And change is messy, uncertain, often silent. There are things that only happen in the dark. Seeds don't grow under stage lights. They grow underground, unseen, in the quiet pressure of soil. Perhaps you've felt this pull too, this knowing that something needs to change. Because maybe, just maybe, you've been performing too long. And maybe it's time to disappear for a while. We live in an age of relentless exposure. Every thought broadcasted, every moment documented, every emotion translated into content. We wake up and immediately step onto a stage we never auditioned for. Social media promised connection, but delivered surveillance. We don't just share our lives anymore, we produce them. We are directors, actors, and critics of our own endless performance. And the algorithm? It rewards consistency. It punishes absence. Miss a day, and you're forgotten. Stay silent, and you're irrelevant. So we post, we update, we engage. Not because we want to, but because we're terrified of what happens if we don't. Neuroscience tells us something fascinating. Our brains can't distinguish between being physically watched and feeling watched. The same stress hormones flood our system either way, which means for many of us, we are living in a perpetual state of performance anxiety. Even when we're alone, we've internalized the audience. the judgment, the measurement. We evaluate ourselves through their eyes. We curate our private moments as if they're already public. We've lost the ability to exist without commentary. And here's what we don't talk about. Being seen is addictive. The validation, the attention, the proof that we matter. It feels like love, but it's not. It's just noise disguised as connection. I tried to step back once. I told myself, I'll take a week off. I'll just be quiet. But the panic came almost immediately. What if people forget about me? What if I miss something important? What if my absence means I never mattered at all? There's a deep fear underneath the performance, a primal one. If I'm not seen, do I exist? If I'm not validated, am I valuable? If I disappear, will anyone come looking? This is the resistance. The voice that equates invisibility with irrelevance, silence with failure, stillness with death. It whispers, you can't afford to be unseen. Not in this world, not anymore. And so we stay. We keep posting, keep performing, keep fragmenting ourselves into bite-sized pieces for consumption. We resist the very thing we're craving, rest. Because resting feels like falling behind. Silence feels like surrender. But here's the truth we're avoiding. The version of you that only exists in public is not the fullest version of you. It's a shadow, a sketch, a performance. And you're exhausted because you've been maintaining an image instead of living a life. Ryokan didn't leave because he was tired of people. He left because he was tired of himself. The version of himself that existed only in relation to others. The self that needed to be understood, approved, remembered. In his silence, something happened. At first, there was panic, restlessness, the urge to explain, to return, to be relevant again. But he sat with it. He let the discomfort wash over him like rain. And slowly, so slowly, the noise began to settle. Without an audience, he stopped editing. Without validation, he stopped pretending. Without performance, he started listening. To the wind, to his breath, to the parts of himself he'd been too busy to notice. He realized he had been so loud on the outside because he was terrified of the silence within. Breathe with me for a moment. Feel what these words awaken in you. Surrender is not defeat. It's alignment. It's saying, I am willing to be unknown for a while. I am willing to let the image dissolve. I am willing to meet myself without an audience. And in that space, that quiet, unseeable space, something real begins to grow. When you allow yourself to be unseen, a strange thing happens. You stop living for the story you'll tell about your life. You start living for the life itself. The sunset doesn't need to be captured. It just is. And you are there, fully, without the filter, without the caption. Your struggles don't need to be relatable. They're just yours, to feel, to learn from, to carry, until they teach you what they came to teach. You stop checking how you're being perceived and start noticing how you actually feel. The difference is everything. I learned this slowly, painfully. I took time away, not a weekend, not a detox, real time. Months where no one knew what I was doing, where I wasn't updating, wasn't explaining, wasn't managing my image. At first, it felt like disappearing, but then it felt like returning. Returning to a self I'd abandoned in the noise, a self that didn't need an audience to exist, didn't need validation to matter. I started writing again, not for anyone, just for me. I started walking without tracking the steps, started cooking without photographing the plate, started feeling without performing the feeling. And slowly, I became real again. Not the polished version, not the curated highlight reel, just real. Flawed, uncertain, growing in directions I couldn't yet explain. And it was the freest I'd ever felt. Here's what I want you to know. You are not your visibility. You are not the sum of your posts, your followers, your engagement metrics. You are not what they think of you. You are not even what you've convinced them you are. You are something deeper, something quieter, something that cannot be captured in a frame or summarized in a bio. And that self, that true, unseeable self, needs space to breathe, space to change, to doubt, to discover, to become. You cannot do that under the glare of constant attention. So allow yourself to be unseen for a while. Not forever, just for a season. Let the world forget your name. Let the algorithm move on without you. Let the silence teach you what the noise never could. You might discover that the person you've been performing is not the person you're becoming, and that's sacred. Before we go on, reflect on this. What are you still holding on to? What would happen if you disappeared for a month, a season, a year? What are you afraid to lose? And more importantly, what might you find if this voice speaks to your silence? Subscribe not for me, but for your own reminders to return, to remember, to be still. Because the truth is this: the world doesn't need another performance. It needs your presence. And presence only grows in the places no one's watching. The seed doesn't announce when it's growing. The mountain doesn't explain its silence. And you don't owe anyone proof of your transformation. Allow yourself to be unseen for a while. And when you return, you'll return whole.